Hi there, welcome to Eduretics, where we make your high school life simple. I'm Aniket, and this is part 2 of our minimum effort strategy that we're devising for the reading and writing section on the digital SAT. In the last video, we did up till data analysis questions. We saw 6 major categories of questions, which I'm going to correct in this video. We're going to have 7 major categories of questions. And reinforcing the same thing again, we don't need to care what concepts are being tested. We just need to care about how are they being tested. Okay, so that's part of our minimum effort strategy. Make sure you have the strategy cheat sheet with yourself, either downloaded or printed, before you start referring to this video for maximum benefit. Okay, so once you have it with you, then only go ahead. You can download it from the link in the comments or the link in the bio video description, or directly from the free resources section of the Eduretics website. Okay, let's go ahead. In the last video, we saw how the data analysis questions look like. Okay, and I told you there are 2 major components. First one is the graph or data. Okay, and the second one is the passage. Now there's another variation of the data analysis questions, and that has just the passage. Okay, that just has a passage, which mostly would be a research. Okay, and you would be asked a question based on that. This is another variation. We're going to discuss this first. Okay, let's see. So the direction for these questions would look like: which finding, if true, most directly supports the researcher's hypothesis? Okay, so which finding, if true, the findings are given the options. If true, would most directly either support or undermine. You could have just these 2 options: the researcher's hypothesis or claim, or research findings or conclusions. Okay, like this, mostly you will see the direction for the question. Okay, now what's the strategy for such questions? First of all, okay, the strategy for these questions. First of all, you look at this direction. If true, so we need to check whichever finding we choose, that would be true. If that would be true, then only we'll proceed. Okay, so we're taking that as the fact. It would support, whether undermine or support, it will support. And what? The researcher's hypothesis. Okay, these 3 things are clear. First of all, look at the researcher's hypothesis. Where is it located? Locate the researcher's hypothesis. In our paragraph here, we can see that it's located right in the start. So they want us to read the whole thing, although it's pretty short. Okay, and then according to that, you would select the options, which ones fit the most. Okay, now here there are 2 ways of thinking. A lot of you must have seen this strategy where the teacher, the tutor, the author says that read the options first. Okay, so there is a confusion about whether to read the passage first or read the options first. Let's go by what the minimum effort strategy says. The minimum effort strategy says, take a quick look on the whole thing and decide whether reading the options first would take more time or reading the passage would take more time, like which one. Okay, and whichever takes lesser time, you do that first, because you obviously know if you read the options first, anyways you'll have to read the options again in most of the questions. It's not really so direct, or it's not humanly possible to keep each and every word in mind from the options while you're reading the passage. So it's inevitable that you need to, it's inevitable to avoid reading the options twice. So options are to be read twice. What's better in that case? Looking at this question, according to minimum effort strategy, the minimum effort would go into reading this passage first. This is actually lesser in size compared to the 4 options given. Okay, so we'll read this first and then look at the options. This will eliminate the need to read the options twice in this case when you're reading the passage first. Okay, so whichever call you take, whether to read the passage first or read the options first, that's up to you. And how we figure that out, that I've already told you. Figure that out according to the minimum effort strategy. Okay, so in this case, I'm gonna do this first and then do the other thing second. That is reading the options. This is going to be second. Okay, this is the strategy done. Let's look. Researchers hypothesized that a decline in the population of dusky sharks near the mid-Atlantic coast of North America led to a decline in the population of eastern oysters in the region. Okay, this line, researchers hypothesize it's talking about a decline in the population of dusky sharks, okay, near mid-Atlantic North America. I don't think they would have any other location in this smaller paragraph, so you don't need to worry about this specific location because this is the only location we're talking about. Okay. So decline in the population of dusky sharks led to a decline in the population of eastern oysters in the region. Decline in the population of eastern oysters in the region. Dusky sharks do not typically consume eastern oysters, but do consume cow-nose rays, which are the main predators of the oysters. Okay, so you got the meaning of what they're trying to say. They're talking about the population of dusky sharks declining, okay, and due to which there's a decline seen in the population of eastern oysters, although they don't consume it directly. So dusky shark does not consume eastern oysters directly, okay. Instead, they consume cow-nose rays, which in turn are consumers of eastern oysters. So this pathway is wrong, this one's correct. Okay. Based on this, which finding, if true, would most directly support the researchers' hypothesis? Okay. So they have hypothesized that the decline in population of dusky sharks has led to a decline in the population of eastern oysters. Okay. That is their hypothesis. Okay. Which of the following, if true, would most directly support it? Okay. So declines in the regional abundance of dusky sharks, prey other than cow-nose rays, are associated with regional declines in dusky shark abundance. Okay, so basically here they played a game. Declines in the regional abundance of dusky sharks prey. Dusky sharks prey other than cow-nose rays. That means they're trying to say that the eastern oysters are also dusky sharks prey other than the cow-nose rays. But that's wrong, factually wrong, because dusky sharks do not typically consume eastern oysters. That's what is written. So this goes wrong. Eastern oyster abundance tends to be greater in areas with both dusky sharks and cow-nose rays than in areas with only dusky sharks. Okay, so since dusky sharks, they don't consume the oysters, okay, but they consume cow-nose rays. Okay, so if imagine in an area the sharks are also there and cow-nose rays are also there, so they'll keep eating the cow-nose rays, and hence the oyster abundance would also tend to be balanced, okay, than in areas with only dusk. If in some areas there are only the sharks, they won't eat the oysters, so oysters population will be even greater. Option B is again wrong. Okay, with only sharks there would be no prey in the form of eastern oyster. Okay. Consumption of eastern oysters by cow-nose rays in the region substantially increased before the regional decline in dusky shark abundance began. Okay, the first part of this option is correct. You already got the meaning of the passage. Okay, those were hardly 4 or 5 lines, and we've condensed them into this form. Okay, now they're saying consumption of eastern oysters by cow-nose rays has substantially increased. When will this substantially increase? When the population of cow-nose rays will substantially increase. When will that substantially increase? When the population of sharks starts declining. But these are saying in option C, the first part is correct. But the second part, before the regional decline, before the decline, this is not possible. Okay, because if the sharks have not declined, the cow-nose rays will keep getting eaten up. Okay, this is also wrong. So inevitably option D is correct, but let's see. Cow-nose rays have increased in regional abundance as dusky sharks have decreased in regional abundance. Yep. So the cow-nose rays have increased since dusky sharks have decreased. Since dusky sharks decreased, lesser cow-nose rays are getting eaten, and hence more eastern oysters are getting eaten by those cow-nose rays. Okay, so this would most directly support the researchers' hypothesis. Okay, because this for a fact, the thing that I'm marking in purple, this was a fact that further elaborated on the researchers' hypothesis. The hypothesis was just just between the population of sharks and oysters, but then this is extra information, and option D is the only other piece of information which, when true, will directly support the researcher's hypothesis. So now let's look at the strategy. I'm going to write it down here quick. So first of all, you identify the researcher's hypothesis. Okay. The researcher's hypothesis. This is the first step. Then, second is to decide whether, see, I'm not making this hard and fast because that's what the minimum effort strategy is all about. You need to decide which one takes the minimum effort. Decide whether to read the options first or the passage first. Okay. Basis that, you look for the correct answer. Again, look for the most direct informations. Like I've always said, look for the literal answers, the direct information in the options. Okay, so this is the strategy for the second variation of the data analysis questions. Let's go ahead. The fourth category of questions on the reading and writing section of the digital SAT is called the conventions of standard English. This is the category how I've named it. To identify this category, you just need to look at the direction. It will by default say this: which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English. Okay, so this is how we identify this part. How do we do it? First of all, identify the blank. The first part is going to be, just a second. First, we identify the blank. Where is it located? Okay. Next, we look at the stuff preceding it and the stuff succeeding it. Okay, so the part just before and the part just after. Read the thing in continuous flow to get the meaning. Okay, to get the meaning of what they're trying to say. Okay, and then in this, one very important thing is they usually have really short options. They don't have many long options. Okay, and there's actually a easier set of questions on the reading and writing section. Okay, so once we identify the blank, we'll introduce, according to the minimum effort strategy, we'll introduce the step of reading the options. Options will tell you a pattern here. Okay, so read the options, since that won't take much time. Okay, read the thing in continuous flow and decide for the appropriate answer. Okay, answer choice. So we identify the blank, it's right here between hot and collect. Okay, then read the options. Springs to, okay, these two words. Okay, it's a clear question of punctuation. So they'll usually test your vocabulary, or even vocabulary is pretty rare on these sets. It's mostly about grammar. This is standard grammar test. Convention of standard English, that's pretty much your grammar test. Okay, so they're testing your punctuation, whether there should be no punctuation or a colon or a hyphen or a comma. Okay, here. Now let's look at the part preceding the blank and succeeding the blank. So I can read from, let's say, in which, we take it from here, first line of defense. If it won't make any sense, we'll start from one sentence preceding this one. So in which rainwater percolates downward through the earth. In this case, the porous rocks of the hills around hot springs to collect in a subterranean basin. Why did I read springs to collect? Because all the options have the same text, so I can read it through and through. Okay, so I don't think we're able to make sense because of this hyphen here. So let's read it even before. The 47 geothermal springs of Arkansas's Hot Springs National Park are sourced via a process known as natural groundwater recharge, in which rainwater percolates downward through the earth. In this case, the porous rocks of the hills around hot springs to collect in a subterranean basin. Okay, now we can get it. It's a continuous idea. How the springs are sourced? Via a process of natural groundwater recharge. In this process, what happens? This thing happens. It's describing the whole process. And then the process is described here all the way till through the earth. Then there's a hyphen. You usually use a hyphen, or you usually use two hyphens to separate irrelevant information, non-consequential information. So you could either use, whenever you see comma, information, comma, or hyphen, information, hyphen, these are irrelevant informations. So how to check this? You read the complete sentence without reading the stuff between hyphens. Okay. So in which rainwater percolates downward through the earth to collect in a subterranean basin. We skipped this part. So springs 2, option C would be the most apt one. Why? Even option D could be correct, the springs comma, if only instead of this first hyphen there was a comma here. Then option D would be correct. But since it's a hyphen, so option C, which is a dash or hyphen, whatever you call it, that's correct. Option C is correct here. Okay. You just need to identify how the sentence is being framed, being formed. I'll go into much more detail of these grammar rules, the tense rules, verb rules, punctuations, when we discuss this specific type of question, the category of question, in a dedicated video. Okay. Let's go ahead. So the strategy works out fine for us. Okay. Let's go to the next one. The next category of questions is the logical transition questions. Okay. These questions have this kind of a direction. Which choice completes the text with the most logical transition? Okay. Usually they would have a passage here in which two not so related ideas would be connected, and they want the most logical transition. So you'll have connector words like this. These options are basically the connector words, conjunctions or connector words. Okay. So in these kind of questions, again, you can look at the options first. These are very short options. Just look at the options. So you first identify the blank, similar to the previous category of questions. Identify the blank. It's right here between embryos and can. Okay. Look at the options. In contrast, for example, meanwhile, consequently. Now, first line of defense, the line just before the blank, and the line just after the blank. Since this is a really short paragraph, you can read it wholly. Organisms have evolved a number of surprising adaptations to ensure their survival in adverse conditions. Tadpole shrimp, Triops longicatudus, embryos dash can pause development for over 10 years during extended periods of drought. Okay, what are they trying to say? First of all, they say that organisms, they've evolved a number of surprising adaptations. They're talking about the surprising adaptations for survival which the organisms have evolved into. Okay, then they give an example of tadpole shrimp. Tadpole shrimp embryos, you can just ignore this part, not at all useful. Tadpole shrimp embryos can pause development for over 10 years during the extended periods of drought. So this is not a very usual thing. That's what they're trying to give us. So if we try option A, in contrast, tadpole shrimps in contrast, that's not correct. This actually, tadpole shrimp can pause development for over 10 years during extended periods of drought, is actually showing a sign of supporting the original claim which the author made. Okay, so in contrast, no, that's wrong. In contrast represents something entirely different from what is being said. Tadpole shrimp embryos, for example, that's a correct one. They're actually trying to build up on what the author originally said. Yep, for example. Tadpole shrimp embryos, meanwhile. Meanwhile, this word is not used for direct connection of this kind. Rather, meanwhile is used to show one action happening, and in the meantime, along with that action, something else is also happening. Okay, that's when meanwhile is used. But that kind of transition we don't see here. So meanwhile is wrong. Consequently is actually used to build on top of what was said earlier. Okay, and it comes out in the form of a result. Here, it's not a result. Tadpole shrimp embryos consequently can pause development. When you use the word consequently, this thing, the idea, the second sentence must be purely related to the first one. Then only it can be said to be a consequence of the first sentence. Whereas in this case, tadpole shrimp embryos are an example elaborating on the first sentence. Okay. So this is the correct one. Option B is the correct one. So what's the strategy? Pretty similar to what we saw in the previous one. Identify the blank. Basically, identify the blank gives you the exact geographical location of where you need to work on. Look at the options. Okay. See any patterns in the options? Keep them in mind. Read the stuff according to line of defense rules. Line of defense rules. Okay. So the first line of defense, one sentence preceding, one sentence succeeding. Second line of defense will come afterwards, but in these questions, usually you would just need to read the complete thing because it does not take much time either. Then find the correct transition word. Okay. So when we do a detailed video on the logical transition question types, I'll give you a series of different rules, like for the different cases. For example, these four. In contrast, for example, meanwhile, consequently, I'll tell you the use of these. Then we have words like however, although, altogether, those kind of things. Then we have something like the negations like but, not, neither, like that. So we'll see the specific usage of each, okay, when we go into detail for this one. Till then, let's go to the next question type. So now we come to the sixth category of questions. I had named this as conveying the idea. Now I'm going to tell you how it exactly looks like. These questions will usually be bigger in length. Okay, bigger in length, not necessarily time taking, but advisable to do once you're done with the easier sections. Okay, so in these questions, read the instruction, read the direction. The student wants to emphasize, this is the first important word. What does he want to emphasize? The distance, just a second. Okay. What does he want to emphasize? The distance covered by the Philadelphia and Lancaster Turnpike. Okay. He wants to emphasize this. Which choice most effectively uses relevant information, not useful, from the notes to accomplish this goal? Okay, to accomplish this goal. So the student wants to emphasize the idea of, emphasize the distance covered by the Philadelphia and Lancaster Turnpike. In these kind of questions, it's of paramount importance that you only focus on what's being asked. Look only for that information. So now, when you see, they will always have some 4 or 5 points or research findings written here, and then the direction of the question. Always, first of all, read the direction. So the strategy for these kind of questions. Read the direction first. First, and highlight the important ideas. Okay. You got the idea that he wants to emphasize the distance covered by the Philadelphia and Lancaster Turnpike. Now, read the points given in the research with strict aim to find what the student, what needs to be emphasized, what needs to be emphasized. This is a really important point. While you're reading the points, read them with the intent of finding this exact thing in the points. Okay, so now let's read. The Philadelphia and Lancaster Turnpike was a road built between 1792 and 1794. Useful? No, not useful. Why? Because it does not tell us about the distance covered by the Philadelphia and Lancaster Turnpike. That's what is of utmost importance. Wrong, not useful. It was the first private turnpike in the United States. Not useful. It connected the cities of Philadelphia and Lancaster in the state of Pennsylvania. Not useful. It was 62 miles long. Useful. Okay, this is the fact that's useful. Now we'll see in the options which option emphasizes on this fact along with covering the maximum information possible, which is also factually correct according to the points given above. So, option A, the 62-mile long Philadelphia and Lancaster Turnpike connected the Philadelphia and cities of Pennsylvania cities of Philadelphia and Lancaster. This is correct because it does cover about the distance covered. Let's see if any other options are in competition. Philadelphia and Lancaster Turnpike was the first private turnpike. Wrong. Which connected to was built between this and this. Wrong. Was completed in this. Wrong. Mostly the options would be, they would be a very near about photocopy of the data points given above, the facts given above. If you see, option A is basically parallel to the fourth point. Option B is the second point. Option C, built between, is first point. Option D is again the first point itself. Okay? So A is the correct one. So these can be really easy, although they look, they're longer, but if you follow the right strategy, the strategy I'm giving here, the minimum effort strategy, these questions are going to be the most accurate one for you. Okay, even though they might take some time, but the procedure is so granular, so logical that you will end up with the right answer. Okay, so this was conveying the idea. This was the sixth type. Okay, now I would exactly not say that there's a seventh type, but there is. So a seventh type of question is called, or asks for, a logical conclusion or completion. This is different from text completion, which we did right in the start, the first category. This is logical conclusion or completion. Okay. In these kind of questions, they'll give you a passage and they'll leave the last part blank and then ask you what could be a logical conclusion or completion for the given passage. Let's look at an example. Okay, so look at this question. The cue for you to identify what category of question this is the direction. Which choice most logically completes the text? It'll either ask this or logically conclude, or which of the following could be a logical conclusion to the text. Okay. Since they're asking us to complete, there must be a blank. The blank you don't need to identify or locate because it will always be at the end. Okay. Right here, we can see that. Okay. Now, in this case, we can, what should we do the best? We should, since they're saying it most logically completes the text, there are two requirements. One is logical. Logical, that means this you would get from the passage. This idea you'll get from the passage. And another big hint, big tool which you can use is grammar. It should also stick to the grammar rules. It should make sense grammatically when you read. When you put any option in this blank and then read it in continuation with this, with the last sentence, it should make grammatical sense as well. Okay? Even that is one good idea, one good trick when you're confused between options. This can be a good, this can come handy in eliminating the wrong options. Okay? So let's see. For these kind of questions, again, take a call on whether to read the options first or the passage first. Okay? Since here, again, the passage is smaller. Again, I'm reinforcing, I'm not forcing you to follow any hard and fast sequence between options and passages in this regard. See, wherever the passages are really long, I would always say go for the options first. But in these cases, take your call. Okay. So in this question, I see the passage is really short. I'll just give a quick read. Okay. Also, because we need to logically complete the text, we don't need the finer details of the text. We just need to get the main idea. Okay. So scholars have noted that F. Scott Fitzgerald's writings were likely influenced in part by his marriage to Zelda Fitzgerald, but many don't recognize Zelda as a writer in her own right. Indeed, Zelda authored several works herself, such as the novel Save Me the Walls and numerous short stories. Thus, those who primarily view Zelda as an inspiration for F. Scott's writings. Okay. So the author told us about the idea that there is this author F. Scott Fitzgerald whose writings were influenced by his wife Zelda Fitzgerald. Like Zelda inspired him to write stuff, but she was also an author in her own right. Okay, this is what is told. So now, thus those who primarily view Zelda as an inspiration, as just an inspiration for F. Scott's writing, okay, they writing overlook the many other factors that motivated F. Scott to write. Are there any other factors listed in this passage that motivated Fitzgerald to write? No, not at all. Don't think extra, don't invent information, don't overthink. Nothing's written directly, this option is wrong. B, risk misrepresenting the full range of Zelda's contributions to literature. Makes sense, yep. Zelda herself was an author. Okay, so this makes sense. May draw inaccurate conclusions about how F. Scott and Zelda viewed each other's works. Is in the whole paragraph or in the passage, do we have any information about what were the opinions of Zelda on Scott's work or Scott's opinions on Zelda's work? No, we don't have. Wrong. Tend to read the works of F. Scott and Zelda in an overly autobiographical light. Again, nowhere that's mentioned. Just by making the options complicated won't get them won't lead us to making a mistake. Okay, so let's plot against College Board sinister plots. Okay, so option B is the correct one, simplest one, risk misrepresenting the full range of Zelda's contributions to literature. Simplest one. Okay, and the passage does talk about Zelda's contribution to literature, and it also talks about her influence on Scott's work. Okay, so, and it also mentions that many don't recognize Zelda as a writer in her own right. So all information you have, mostly those who primarily view Zelda as an inspiration, they will misrepresent the full range of Zelda's contributions. Okay, this is how we single out the right answer. Okay, and this is the seventh or the last type, which is logical completion. Okay, so the strategy is simple. Here you don't even need to locate the blank. Okay, you just need to take a call, decide whether to go for the options first or the text first, whatever your call might be. Based on that, just don't invent information, look for the exact information that's mentioned. Okay, and eliminate the factually wrong statements. Or so you want to eliminate which all? The grammatically wrong statements, those would be eliminated. Factually wrong, like which represent information opposite of what's written, factually wrong, those would be eliminated. Okay, then what else do you eliminate? Any extra information, extra info, eliminate. Even this eliminates. Okay, you don't need any of these. Okay. So I hope you've got a good footing on how the reading and writing section needs to be tackled. The strategies are in place. Next up, we're going to come up with detailed videos on each and every question category. I'll have a lot of questions which we'll solve live in throughout the recording. You'll get the worksheets, corresponding worksheets from the website itself, from eduretics.com website. Okay, make sure you practice from here. This whole series is going to be approximately 10 to 12 videos long, and this is going to set you up for everything on the read and writing section. You don't need any other help anywhere apart from your own self-guided practice. Okay, self-study. And if there are any questions, feel free to reach out to me on the comments or through the website. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.